You close your eyes. The room is dark. Everything around you is quiet. And then your brain starts talking. It replays a conversation from 3 years ago. It drafts emails you will never send. It catastrophizes about a meeting tomorrow, and then, for no reason at all, it wonders if you remembered to lock the front door. You did. You definitely did. But now you have to think about it again. This is not insomnia. This is not anxiety. This is something far older, far stranger, and far more deeply wired into you than any doctor has ever told you. Your brain at night is not broken. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do. And the reason why will change the way you think about every sleepless hour you have ever spent staring at the ceiling. Here is where it starts. For almost all of human history, night was the most dangerous time to be alive. Not metaphorically, literally. The predators that hunted your ancestors were built for darkness. Leopards, hyenas, lions. Their eyes were adapted for low light. Yours were not. The moment the sun went down, your ancestors became prey, vulnerable, exposed. And the ones who survived were not the ones who slept soundly through it. They were the ones who stayed alert. Anthropologist David Sampson at the University of Toronto has spent years studying sleep in hunter-gatherer societies, groups of humans whose lives most closely resemble the lives your ancestors actually lived. What he found dismantled almost everything modern sleep science had been assuming. These groups did not sleep in long, unbroken 8-hour blocks. They slept in shifts. Different members of the group would be awake at different times throughout the night, unintentionally creating a kind of rotating watch system. Someone was almost always partially conscious. Someone was always listening. Your brain inherited that watch. The technical name for what happens to you at night is hyperarousal. It is not a disorder, it is a feature. Your default mode network, the part of your brain that activates when you are not focused on any specific external task, does not switch off when you lie down, it switches on. It begins running what neuroscientists call offline processing, sorting through the day's experiences, flagging unresolved threats, rehearsing future scenarios, looking for patterns in what happened so it can better predict what comes next. This is your brain doing its job, the job it has always done, at night, in the dark. But here is what nobody tells you. That process was never designed to feel comfortable. Comfort was not the point. The point was survival. When your ancient brain scans the day's events at midnight and lands on something unresolved, something threatening, something uncertain, it does not file it away and return to standby. It amplifies it. Because in the ancestral environment, an unresolved threat was not something to sleep through. It was something to solve. Right now. Researcher Matthew Walker, a neuroscientist at UC Berkeley and author of some of the most cited work on sleep and the brain, has shown that the emotional centers of the brain become up to 60% more reactive at night than during the day. The amygdala, your brain's alarm system, loses its connection to the prefrontal cortex, the rational, reasoning part of your brain that normally keeps it in check. At night, the alarm is louder. The reasoning is quieter. And whatever you were already anxious about becomes enormous. You were not imagining it. Your 2 a.m. problems really do feel bigger. Because to a part of your brain that is millions of years old, they are. Think about what that means for a moment. Every time you lie awake replaying something that went wrong, your brain is not torturing you. It is protecting you. It is running a threat assessment loop on a system built for a world that no longer exists. A world where the things that kept you up at night could kill you by morning. Your brain does not know that the threat is an unanswered email. It does not know the difference between a charging predator and a difficult conversation you need to have with your boss. It knows something is unresolved, and it will not stop flagging it until you resolve it, or until exhaustion finally overrides the signal. This is why distraction never works. You scroll through your phone. You watch something mindless. You do everything you can to drown out the noise. And the moment you stop, the thought comes back. Because you have not resolved the threat. You have only briefly overwhelmed the signal. The ancient watchman inside you is still at his post, still watching. Evolutionary psychologist Randolph Nesse at Arizona State University calls this the smoke detector problem. A smoke detector that only goes off when there is a real fire would be a terrible smoke detector. The cost of a false alarm is nothing. The cost of a missed fire is everything. So smoke detectors go off for steam, for burnt toast, for candles. They are calibrated to be oversensitive because the alternative is catastrophic. Your threat detection system works exactly the same way. It would rather give you 1,000 sleepless nights over nothing than miss the one night where the threat was real. It kept your ancestors alive, every single one of them, all the way down to you. But here is where it gets counterintuitive. The same mechanism that evolved to protect you becomes most dangerous when you fight it. When you lie in bed telling yourself you should be asleep, you are adding a new threat to the loop. Now your brain is not just processing the original unresolved concern, it is also processing the threat of not sleeping, which is itself a threat to your performance, your health, your next day. The alarm is now monitoring the alarm. The watchman has started watching himself. Sleep researchers call this cognitive arousal. It is the meta-anxiety of insomnia, the anxiety about being anxious, the thinking about thinking. And it is almost entirely a modern invention. Your ancestors did not worry about whether they were getting enough REM sleep. They did not have a concept of the 8-hour block. They drifted in and out of consciousness over the course of a night, and that was simply what night was. The pressure you feel to sleep, the shame and frustration of lying awake, is not ancient. It is new. It was handed to you by the Industrial Revolution and the invention of the electric light, which for the first time in human history turned sleeplessness into a personal failure rather than a natural state. Roger Ekirch, a historian at Virginia Tech who spent 16 years researching pre-industrial sleep patterns, found evidence across hundreds of historical sources, from medical texts to court records to personal diaries, that people before the invention of artificial light almost universally slept in two separate periods. First sleep came shortly after dark. Then they would wake, sometimes for an hour or two, in a state of quiet wakefulness. They would think, pray, talk, even visit neighbors. Then they would return to second sleep until morning. The waking in the night was not the problem. It was the night. What you experience when you cannot stop thinking at 3 a.m. is not a failure of your modern body. It is a signal from a much older one, a body that woke up in the night for 1,000 generations and found that useful. A brain that used the quiet hours to process what the day had thrown at it, to prepare for what the next day might bring, and to remain just alert enough that nothing could sneak up on the camp. You are the descendant of every human who survived the night. Every single watchful, restless, overthinking ancestor who lay awake long enough to hear the danger coming. The thoughts are not the enemy. They are the inheritance. So the next time you find yourself at 2 a.m., eyes open, mind running, replaying conversations and drafting scenarios and wondering why you cannot simply switch off, try this. Do not fight it. Do not add another layer of threat to the loop. Instead, recognize what is actually happening. An ancient system is running its check. The watchman is doing his rounds. Let him finish. Let the thought arrive. Let it be there. Because the harder you try to silence the watchman, the louder he gets. Your brain at night is not keeping you from rest. It is trying to earn it. And somewhere, across an immense stretch of time, every ancestor who ever stared into the dark and kept thinking long enough to see the sun rise again is the reason you are here. Tonight, eyes open, wondering why you cannot stop. Tonight, when you close your eyes and your brain starts talking, you will know exactly why.